Hello and welcome back to Game of Trades, your #1 channel for videos on the stock market and cryptocurrencies. This video is going to be focused on Bitcoin. Now, Bitcoin hasn't been doing much over the past few weeks, but I do have quite a few developments to cover underneath the surface on Bitcoin right now that I wanted to share with you guys. From a quick technical standpoint, we've been trading within this wedge type pattern. We're going to take a look at some of the other technical levels that we're watching out for. But in this video, we're going to focus on, first of all, the sentiment. What's the sentiment on Bitcoin right now? What type of market behavior we're seeing? Are people expecting and positioned for a massive move up, or are people expecting a breakdown here, and what impact is that going to have on the price? We're going to take a look at the on-chain data, what's happening in terms of supply and demand on Bitcoin. There's been some big developments over the past couple of weeks. And then, of course, the equity markets. Bitcoin is highly correlated to equities. How is the macro environment going to impact Bitcoin? A lot to unpack in this video, so I am going to get right into it. If you are interested in following Bitcoin with us, looking at both the short-term opportunities and the long-term investment opportunity in this asset, we aim to find the best risk-reward opportunities on Bitcoin and also the best long-term buying opportunity in this crazy asset. If you're interested in that, don't forget to smash that subscribe button. Now, without further ado, let's get right into it. Okay, so before we get into the short-term stuff, I want to quickly show you this chart just to remind you of the long-term bullish case on Bitcoin. Now, of course, if you just zoom out on this chart, you'll see the incredible price appreciation on Bitcoin. Now, this is not part of our long-term bullish case. Just because something has risen in the past doesn't mean that's going to continue into the future, but it's definitely going in the right direction. Now, what we do like to look at is the adoption, and that's the total number of users, and we compare that to, for example, the internet users over time between 1992 and 2006. That's the white line here, and we're comparing that to total crypto users between 2016 and 2030, and you can see we're seeing that same type of adoption, right? And we all know how massive of an impact the internet had on both our day-to-day lives and on the financial markets, and what type of massive disruptions it led to. You know, I often say the single best investment opportunities throughout history. You go back 150 years to all the best investment opportunities. What were they? It was all disruptive technologies like the car, like the discovery of oil, gas, the radio, the TV, phones. These were all new technologies when they were the best opportunities, and crypto is definitely in the first half of its adoption. Now, while the adoption is linear, price can go up and down very violently. And we know that's the case just by looking at the chart of internet stocks over time, right? Lots of wild moves along the way, lots of bankrupt companies, and I expect lots of pain along the way on crypto, but with that background of massive long-term opportunity. So just a quick reminder of the adoption case for Bitcoin. I think it's very important to zoom out every once in a while, especially when you're down 50% from the all-time high. And this is where I want to show you a very interesting chart of the total transfer volume in loss on Bitcoin. Now, what is this? This is how many Bitcoin are being sold at a loss. So it's a sort of capitulation indicator. And I've put a 50-day moving average on this indicator to show us, you know, what type of behavior we've had over the last 50 days. And how does that compare to history? And you can see, of course, every time you get big bottoms on Bitcoin, right? Going back to early 2017, every big bottom on Bitcoin has corresponded to big spikes in the capitulation. Let's go over them one by one. You had one in this big move down in 2018. That was a bear market, but big capitulation here. and that was followed by a rally from, I believe, $6,000 on Bitcoin all the way to $11,000. So price doubled on that rally. So for those of you who say that we're in a bear market, that might be true, but you can still get massive rallies on Bitcoin that make the short-term risk reward exceptional on this asset. You can get 100% moves up in Bitcoin during a bear market. Now here we had another capitulation in 2018 that marked the bottom of the bear market at $3,000. Then another capitulation during COVID right here, another capitulation right here in 2021 at that big bottom. So you can see the trend here. Every time you have a rise in this indicator, especially over the last 50 days, it marks just massive bottoms on Bitcoin. Now here, what's interesting is we've had one of the biggest capitulation moves with just so much capitulation over such a long period of time. This is not something we expected, right? We were looking at this indicator back here in December 2021, and we had already seen a lot of capitulation. And obviously we haven't recovered since, but that doesn't mean that this indicator all of a sudden doesn't work, right? It still has the same weight. It's just that we're in an environment that has a lot of fear, and that fear is taking a long time to switch. And perhaps it could take a little bit longer, but this speaks to risk reward in the short term. And just looking at this, it doesn't mean that we've seen the bottom, but it means that we are getting very close to a local bottom on Bitcoin. And another way of looking at the sentiment, looking at the capitulation, is by taking a look at this crypto fear and greed index. It's very interesting. You see big moves up and down in this crypto fear and greed index. So again, we can put a moving average on this indicator. So that's going to give us an aggregate type of reading of what type of sentiment we've had over the last 50 days. If we put a 50 period moving average, we have this green line right here, and if we take a look at that properly, we are in a period where we have an extreme amount of fear in crypto. And if we backtest this indicator and we actually take a look at every moment that we had this type of extreme fear where this 50-day moving average of the indicator crossed down below 25. So we've had 4 readings over the past 3 years on Bitcoin with this type of extreme fear, 2021, 2020, and twice in 2018. And all of them have corresponded to long-term buying opportunities on Bitcoin. And if you go to what we actually do at gameoftrades.net, looking at sentiment, looking at investor behavior, investor psychology is a huge part of what we do. On top of the actual high quality data that we provide, the analysis and the research that we make on cryptocurrencies, we actually look at a variety of sentiment indicators like the ones we just looked at that hopefully keep your heart pressure down in periods like this that are very violent, but where you have to keep in mind that long-term outlook and potentially the massive long-term returns you can have on this asset. And also not get carried away when things are going too well, right? For example, back in November when Bitcoin was trading at $68,000, we were paying attention to a lot of the spending that was happening, and we looked at this crypto fear and greed index that was incredibly overextended, and that increased the likelihood of it pulling back. Now the problem is that it fell a lot more than we initially anticipated, but now we're getting back into that range where we're getting extreme fear readings, and it's the very opposite of the situation where we were back in November, where we had a lot of bullish sentiment, a lot of euphoria here at the all-time high. Now you may ask, okay, yes, these were great buying opportunities, but look at 2018, Bitcoin was at $6,000 here, but it still dropped another 50% before bottoming. So why would this time actually trigger a rally when here it didn't trigger any rally? And that's why I want to show you this chart here. And that's a formula that we created that we call the Hodler demand. And what we basically did is we divided the illiquid supply, so the number of Bitcoin that are being held by long-term holders, and we divide that by the liquid and highly liquid supply. So basically Bitcoin that are readily available on the market. And so that gives you a type of supply squeeze ratio. And you can see clearly this work, and you can see how well this works. Clearly, right before we had that big breakout in 2020, you had a squeeze of the supply, a lot of illiquid supply and not much liquid supply on the market that created this big boom in the price of Bitcoin. And then you can see at the top here, right there, you've got this indicator crashing down right before Bitcoin actually dropped 50%. Now you can see what was happening back in 2018 throughout this period. Supply dynamics were just collapsing throughout this period. No one wanted to hold Bitcoin. Everyone was exiting, and that's not at all what we're seeing here. So it is a change in character relative to this bear market. We're actually seeing pretty strong demand right here, almost getting back to the all-time high. Now we are getting into an environment where we have a lot of macro headwinds. We have potentially a recession coming in the next year or so. And so that's going to be a headwind to Bitcoin, but the supply dynamic is good here. It's healthy. So what levels are we looking at on the technical chart on Bitcoin? And I want to take a look at this on a daily chart right here. First of all, one chart that we are paying attention to is a price channel that I'm going to show you in just a second right here, connecting these two lows and these two highs on Bitcoin. Here we have the 2017 bull market top. Here we have the 2021 run top. And then here we have the most recent all-time high on Bitcoin. And all of these coincide perfectly with one another, right? Big top, big bottom, big top, big top. So it's possible that we come back here, retest that low or undercut it slightly, which is very, very common, right? We had the same type of thing in this zone here, multiple retests of the low. Tag that level of support before bouncing up. That is a potential scenario. I don't like giving exact scenarios because no one is able to do that, but that's potentially something we're watching out for. And that would very likely print some divergence between the price that would be making a lower low and the RSI that would be making a higher low here. And that'd be a similar setup where price was making a lower low, RSI making a higher low at support bounce. So you can see what I mean when I say that the risk reward here is pretty favorable. In the next episode, the next Bitcoin episode, we're going to talk about the macro environment in detail and how we think returns on Bitcoin could be in this next phase of the economic cycle that we're heading into. Now, I hope you guys enjoyed this episode. If you did, do not forget to smash that like button and of course subscribe if you haven't already. Now, in the meantime, I wish you good luck on your trading and see you next time.